Hello, everyone, and welcome in to the USL show. We are back at you after a trip to Portland and a little bit of a summer breather just to recollect our thoughts. But we've got a huge show for you, storylines from across the tiers of the USL. So to start it off, Ryan, how are you doing?
Yeah, doing well. It was a really fun trip up to Portland a few weeks ago. And honestly, anytime someone has asked me about it, I've said the lobster roll at the restaurant that we had ate at was one of the highlights. And I've tried to work that into conversation anytime that I get the chance.
Good move, good move. I don't blame you because that was delicious and fun. But yeah, Phil, how are you recovering?
Yeah, just mostly recovering mentally, like having to return from Portland. It was just one of those trips that, it was sad that it ended, but I was very happy to, not to get ahead of myself with the plugs, but it was very cool the day after the game to spend some time with the Dirigo Union folks and recorded the most scenic podcast I've ever recorded.
We'll get into this. This was going to be my question for you. Okay.
and they also took me out to the zoo for a just a beer or so before I caught a ride to the airport. So yeah, it was fun to spend some time with the Hearts supporters.
Love it. Well, before we get into the discussion proper, part of the reason we were able to make it out to Portland in the first place was our patrons. So let's list off John Hunt, Frank Anthony, Christopher Cohn, Harry Austin, John Fuller, Michael Fuchs, Joshua Duder, Noah Telford, Alberto Aguilar, Jeremy Churchman, Stephen Howard, Rian Lakara, Tim Knox, NF Reg 30, MOS, Kunal Patel, All of the Hedgehog, Andrew Towsley, Madcat Peel, Ryan Smeltzer, Sandy Lester, William Lamb, Dylan Reed, and Josh. Thank you so much for supporting us. Again, wouldn't be possible without you guys. If you want your name on the list, if you want me, Phil, Ryan, other people to maybe go out to more USL games this year, hey, join the Patreon. Link will be in the description. One championship game, unfortunately, we weren't able to make it to, but had an unreal atmosphere. Came up in Vermont this weekend, where Vermont Green took home the League Two final over Ballard. If you saw anything about this game, which went quite viral online, you know that the atmosphere was absolutely rocking up there in Vermont. Phil, Ryan, I'll kind of open the floor to you guys on this one. Why was this such a meaningful moment for Vermont and the USL at large?
I mean, one, the fact that, there's been a lot of these projects in League Two, League One, like where there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of sort of fanfare maybe around, hey, this is a very cool project, maybe cool branding, maybe cool like aspects to what's going on. And Vermont Green like definitely has some of that in that the branding's amazing, their whole dedication to net carbon neutral impact, all of that stuff, very cool. And it could sort of lend itself to not producing anything of note on the field, which I think we've seen from a lot of these sort of similar projects in the past. Absolutely amazing that, number one, people in Vermont obviously deeply care about what's going on with Vermont Green, and Burlington was just like absolutely buzzing. Virtue Field becoming the Bernie Bayou, I saw was absolutely amazing.
No one in the USL is going to beat that Tifo, let me tell you.
And the fact that they won it, I mean, obviously a lot of advantage in, a home run to the final that includes, just an absolute raucous sellout. But the fact that they got the job done, the fact it happened in dramatic fashion, both in the semis on penalty kicks and then in the final, last second, sort of last gasp goal. There's just something sort of fairy tale about what's going on with Vermont Green. And it's not just this cool project anymore. It is League Two champions and against a very, very legit Ballard side.
Yeah, I mean, this was a Ballard side who, had they had won, would have made it 2 USL League Two titles within the span of 3 years, which is very impressive for a team that was going into this match traveling across the country to play this game. But the one thing that really stuck out to me, I think, just you saw it in the background of the game, but someone had the screen grab on the subreddit of seeing people like standing on the bleachers of a like fields opposite Virtue Field, watching it like kind of over or just like over the ledge, if you will, to try and like get a glimpse of that. Like that's when you know that you have something truly special on your hands. Like we saw it up in Portland of people watching on the other side of the fence to look in at that, but just not just seeing the incredibly great crowd that they had on hand, but to win in such dramatic fashion. Like you really couldn't ask for such a better into the USL2 season. And it really shows like how many great markets that we have on display in Vermont's like entire playoff run. Like all of the posters that they had publishing for each game was just something phenomenal. Like if they sold those in like a book, like just cataloging the entire season, that would be incredible, just coffee table material that it's just a great end to the year.
Yeah, it's a lot of what we talked about in Portland, right? This is an organization that gets it. They know why they matter to the community, how they can leverage that trust, that relationship that they've built to bring people in and really make this feel communal. And frankly, Ballard does a lot of the same thing. And talking about their sustained success in a league where there is so much player churn, that's impressive in its own right. So like shout out to everything they're doing. But I think Vermont has punched above their weight and grown to be such a thing within the USL environment because of that sense of message that is not only meaningful in its own right, but very meaningful to the context of Burlington and Vermont. Like you see the Bernie tifo and you think, okay, interesting, whatever, but that matters to people. Like that's somebody who encapsulates community in a similar way to what this soccer club is trying to do. You love to see it. And even on the field, right? This was a great performance from them, a high level of play. That first goal, which is a penalty kick, but the way they earn it with Labordelos getting that through to Ian Abbey in the wing, that's a pass that you don't see players in the championship making a lot of the time, frankly. Mm-hmm. This is a team that has guys that are going to be at higher levels at certain points. And I think it was a great showcase for why League Two can matter from the best club that is doing it to the utmost.
Well, and the dramatic goal in and of itself, like sort of encapsulates this whole pathway that League Two sells, right? Where you have the guy who won the NCAA final with his golden goal scoring the winning goal in the League Two final, like later in the same year, basically, so that sort of pathway of NCAA to League Two to professional or to potential professional career is the whole selling point now. And just like being able to continue those careers, it's one of those things where League Two probably can't believe their luck in terms of, what an advert for the league, as they would say. But also, I think in particular with this Vermont team, it being specific to between what the University of Vermont did, like in the NCAA tournament last year, what now Vermont Green has done, it has put Burlington and Vermont on the map soccer-wise. And just shown that, and I think it's fitting that it came in the aftermath of our trip to Maine, because New England has some very, very serious soccer stuff going on right now that is just amazing to see, and it's wild to see it in such a kind of condensed area. But it's been it's awesome, and I think exactly what League Two would want to show in that, hey, we have clubs here who are maybe punching above their weight or doing more of, they're carrying on a semi-professional club in a very, very professional way for both Ballard and Vermont.
And we'll be seeing Vermont in the Open Cup again next year as well with this qualification. And Phil, what I'm hearing is a team in League One of the championship should immediately sign Kessel and guarantee he wins the league with a goal. Well, in the final, then
that would be a crazy bit of pub trivia of like what player scored 3 game-winning goals in 3 separate finals in the same calendar year or whatever. But no. And shout out to Kaler as well for. I mean, I don't think it's any coincidence that the USL show went with the Sound of the Forest kits that are green and Vermont green win USL League Two. That feels like Kaler basically manifested it.
Yeah, wake up, sheeple. It's all connected. And real quick, the guy who served in the cross on that last goal was Zachary Zenge, who his brother plays for Lexington. Like, it's a USL affair all throughout that family, which you kind of love to see. Like, pipeline availability for anybody to get in the mix and prove themselves. And I think based on what Zenge did this season, we're going to be seeing him in the pro ranks eventually. But yeah, just a showcase for everything that Vermont is doing right. And I think that's lovely to see. Yeah. Moving over to League One, a game that frankly was similarly exciting to that League Two final, where Charlotte and Texoma draw 3-3. There's a red card late in the first half. Charlotte adds a goal that you think, oh, maybe they're going to see it out. Texoma comes back and equalizes in the end because they just don't quit. Ryan, I want to start with you because in your betting preview for the weekend, you just said that this might be the most clear over 2.5 goals wager of the weekend. You were 100% correct. Why did this game end up being so high scoring?
I mean, if we're looking back through the previous, all three games that these two teams have played each other, there's been 18 goals between these two sides in these games. It just seemed like whenever these two teams have met, like when they first met, it was like the sign that like Texoma was a little bit more to them than what had originally had met the eye at their start of the year. And I just felt like that this team was going to drag both sides into a really high scoring affair. And we saw that Texoma came back from 3-1 down to draw the match and rescue a point out of this one. And obviously the red card played a difference, but they did hit the over 2.5 goals mark in the first half on its own. And yeah, this turned into pretty much being the most exciting USL 1 match of the weekend.
I was trying to think of, in hockey they have, I think it's the Bobby Hull hat trick, right? Of a goal, assist, and a penalty.
Yeah.
I think there's probably a player that would be fitting, and maybe Ryan, you can help me with this, but like the USL equivalent of that, of Maru scores and gets sent off. Like, what sort of brace is that? Like that someone fits that category.
It reminds me of Eric Lamela for Spurs, who would score with both feet and then get a red card, like the Rabona he had in the North London Derby that then got sent off. So I'll have to find a USL equivalent, but that's the first player that came to mind.
So yeah, Maru sort of like lives that journey of he is super influential for Independence and then just has this sort of moment of madness, like sees red, unfortunately. Like, I think he just had this sort of he throws a punch, I think, like effectively, and maybe not even the most egregious like red card we saw this weekend in USL, but yeah, Maru, it ends up influencing the game in that Texoma have this sort of mad style where even down to 10, I was like, Charlotte they're somehow getting numbers. And even when Texoma have players back, Charlotte breaking with 2 is enough to be dangerous. And Texoma just continued to carry a threat. Like, and it wasn't necessarily, I don't know, Texoma seemed the less serious of the two, but they just always hung around and they never felt like completely out of it, no matter how often I'm like, oh, they're far too open. They're far too, like, they're getting carved up. And they just hung around and they almost win it. Like they almost did win it 4-3. I think it was Teddy Baker had a shot that was saved late on. And then I will also give one more shout for Javi Garcia. Where would Texoma be without Javi Garcia? I don't really. He's been one of. Maybe this is a bold claim, and Alex can feel free to correct me on this, but I feel like Javi's probably been one of the best keepers in League One, bar none. So, and that's for a Texoma team that gives up, obviously, its fair share of goals. And I still think he's been extremely good. So, anyways. All that being said, yeah, just mad. And I guess Texoma guarantees madness like Ryan predicted.
I mean, 12 games this year, it's gone over 2.5 goals already.
That's not great if you're Texoma. Like, I think you might be a little bit concerned about that. What I will say about this team is that the openness is almost by design to a certain extent. Like, they're just willing to take risks. because they know that if the game gets transitional and really becomes box to box, they trust that they've got the talent to break you down, counterattack, do that job. And frankly, whenever they tried to like build out of the back and be a normal soccer team, it kind of ended in disaster. Like Charlotte was pushing that pivot up, forcing turnovers, creating really dangerous opportunities. And then on the flip side, if you could get Ajmir Spengler in space, if Luke McCormick could get on the dribble, and McCormick's somebody who's really stepped up to the plate as the season has gone on, like that was the moment where you really became impressed with what this team was doing. I don't know if they equalize if there isn't the red card, but hey, whatever, who cares? They got the result that they wanted from this game. Charlotte probably not going to end up being upset about this game. It is what it is with Maru. You take a tough point against a tough team. But yeah, a fun one in what was a weird weekend in League One across the board, which is a natural segue into whatever happened in the Tormenta Greenville game. There was a lot to like from the Greenville side. We will get to that in a moment, but there is no other starting point other than Austin Pack 10 minutes into added time, coming up from the opposite goal, rising above the fray to get his header to tie this thing at the last second. An amazing moment for somebody who we've talked about as the best keeper in League One for a couple of years. Ryan, how amazing was that finish?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like every year now within USO, we end up getting like one goalkeeper goal, and it's just something that is so phenomenal to just follow within this league. And for Tormenta, a team who's been on the outside of the playoff picture, to rescue a result in such dramatic fashion as they did, this is something that like could really at least kind of jumpstart their way going back towards a new, a new start on the year, if you will. And like both of these teams, like entering this game have now scored in at least 7 of their last 8 games as well. So yeah, it's a really just inspired finish from Austin Pack.
There's a little bit of like karma about the whole thing, because and you could tell that Pack wanted to make a difference, and he's up there obviously because they need the result and all of that, but also because he must have been absolutely sick about giving that penalty away in the first place. And so the fact that he gives the penalty away, Greenville take the lead, it looks like they're probably going to win. It's deep into stoppage time, and for him to rescue the point himself, it just must have felt so good. Like obviously it doesn't fully make up for it or whatever, but the fact that they were able to get out of there with the result and have that moment in front of in it at home is just it's just special. And Pack is a special player. Like for all of like you said, he's been one of the best keepers in the league for years now, and he's just been one of these guys that always seems to pop up in the big moments, and none bigger than you're up for a corner for your team at the death and come up with the big goal.
So tying two things together here, Javier Garcia, second in League One this season so far for goals prevented, so he's really living up to it. Austin Pack having a little bit of a tough time settling at Tormenta. He has allowed 0.8 more goals than you'd expect. Scoring one more than makes up for it. So Austin Pack back in the green with that. And boy, did Tormenta need a galvanizing moment like that. This is a team that has had their ups and downs, had a decent Jägermeister Cup result a couple of weeks ago, but they need somebody to step up to the plate and be that guy. Maybe it is Austin Pack. We've seen him drag teams kicking and screaming to the playoffs before. Tormenta is only, 4 or 5 points behind the playoff cut line right now. Getting that draw against Greenville is an important result for the team mentality, especially in the way they did it. But it also keeps Greenville down, stops them from extending that edge in a game that the Triumph frankly deserved to win. Like I thought the way that they worked through the midfield, what they were getting from Robles and Zukowski on either wing, that's a W for the Triumph most weeks. So Tormenta, that is a draw that feels like a victory in a meaningful way.
And especially with Tormenta's next 4 games being away from home, and you tossing games against Westchester and Richmond in that time, it's a really big opportunity to pretty much make or break the Tormenta season.
Yeah. Westchester probably just gave away another penalty in the time we spent discussing that. Other big result from League One this weekend came with Spokane 2-1 victory over Union Omaha. Spokane had been in this rut 2 weeks in a row against Sacramento and Chattanooga, where they gave up a goal in like the opening 5 minutes and then had to break down one of the best defenses in the USL. They flipped the tables on Union Omaha. They get a 6-minute free kick from Neil Vignoles, an absolute peach of a goal from him. They defend that lead. They get some safety. Omaha gets one back in the end, but this was a pretty roundly convincing performance for the Velocity. Phil, I want to start with the negative side here and the Union Omaha discussion. It's another high XG game for them, but it's another bad result. What's the temperature like for this team?
I mean, I think it's probably as you'd expect, given the fact that now with Casciato out the door, it just put them in a state of flux even beyond what they were feeling on the field. Now that it extends a little bit, so I think there's probably an uneasiness there. They haven't exactly found the formula yet of how do we want Pato Bateofaz and Stefano Pino like to fit into this team, and can we get them on the pitch at the same time? Like Pino comes off the bench, ends up like getting the penalty, I think, technically called, even though I'll be honest, I watched the highlights back. I've got no idea what it was given for.
Yeah.
I watched it a handful of times. It was like, surely there's something I'm missing here. Either way, like, to me, having Bateofaz and Pino, you want to find a way at a League One level to get them both contributing, get them both firing. And it just has been like a little bit stop-start. The injury to Josue Aron Gomez has like further hurt their attack in terms of just establishing some consistency and finding the right fits. To me, I think this is just a team that wobble at the beginning of the season turned into enough of a thing to where the confidence of this team is just a little bit actually shaken. And I think now they'll need some kind of sort of what we talked about with Tormenta. Like they need a moment. Like this Omaha team needs something to rally around. And unfortunately, it came up against a Spokane team that was looking for the same thing, and Vignoles provided it in the 6 minutes. So yeah, I think it's just a little bit of a wobble became a true thing. The gaffer's gone, and now what do we do? Like, how do we right the ship? And we've got maybe, I think Omaha thinks they have the right pieces. I tend to agree, but none of those pieces are feeling at their absolute best right now. And I think it's impacting how the team is playing and definitely how they're playing in front of goal.
It's a bit of a weird give and take where they had that Jägermeister Cup game where they start Pato and Stefano Pino next to one another, and they just bowl over Texoma. Like, it's not even close.
Yeah.
And that's a game where Ryan Becker is coming off the left side. We've seen some matches where it's Prosper Kasim on the right. It felt like they had this balance of two tanks that are occupying the defense, can poach from anywhere, creative presences in the half spaces. The balance is pretty clear. And there were moments where like Mark Bronick, who's an up-and-comer at 18, was really bright on the dribble in this match. I think Becker dropping off and being more of a second striker can be effective for Omaha. I don't quite know why Candela is getting away from that formula that for me was behind their best post Dom Casciato performance. Still, you're running into a buzzsaw whenever you play Spokane, and I get that. But questions up in the air for me. Ryan, as you think about this game, what's the takeaway, whether it be Omaha or Spokane?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, go back to November and say that the Omaha team that beat Spokane in the final 3-0, like, tell all the fans leaving that stadium that, hey, the table is going to be flipped at the end when these teams meet again, because this was their first match post that final meeting. And, like, tell all the Omaha fans, you guys will be at the bottom of the table and Spokane will be leading the table at that time. And I think it would be like a shock, but like I had picked Spokane to win this match coming into this one with over 2.5 goals scored, which was exactly spot on. But yeah, like if you're looking at Omaha moving forward, this is another one where like they dominated possession in this game and they still kind of came up empty on this one. And it's starting to get to a point where they need to start putting some points up on the board or I think like within this league, we had talked about it up in Portland where like you could string together a few results and quickly find yourselves climbing up the table. Omaha are only 6 points out of a playoff spot, but they have 2 matches this week that offers basically that chance to move back up the table. Like tomorrow's game that they have against Westchester is going to be very silly, I imagine. And then they have a very difficult match against Chattanooga on the weekend, which they really can't overlook. I do think the main story of this one is that Omaha definitely needs to find something to get themselves back on track, but Spokane themselves got themselves back on track with a very solid result.
Yeah, and you're right to point out that margin to the playoff cut line. Like Omaha has 3 games in hand on Greenville, and they're only trailing by 6 points. That's nothing. They could be in the mix within a matter of days, given how this season has gone. They've also got this ace in the hole of Vincenzo Candela is the interim manager. Somebody's coming for that role. You know the aspirations of what Union Omaha thinks they can be within League One. Like they see themselves as the top dogs for a reason. I would not be surprised to see them make a splash and bring in somebody who can galvanize a comeback effort. Things to watch there for sure. I do want to credit Spokane for just getting the job done. On the sly, if you count the forfeit against Westchester as a loss, it had been 3 games winless for them. It's good to just get in the positive, stop a Union Omaha team that we know can be effective, even if they have struggled. They continue to stick in first place, although Chattanooga, with a game in hand, could overtake them at some point.
It probably doesn't feel great for Union Omaha either, watching Dom Casciato's Rowdies stomp Indy and a goal shy Rowdies team like scoring a bunch when Omaha's like, that could be us. Like, but yeah, unfortunate. But again, I think they've got a strong team. They just, yeah, it'll be interesting to see who comes in to take over that project, because I think it'll be appealing to a lot of folks within U.S. Soccer.
There's enough talent on that team that whoever the choice is, like the turnaround feels like it should be quick. So, hey, you know what? Let's start with some coaching news in the USL Championship as we move over, where Devin Rensing is the new manager of the Las Vegas Lights. Rensing has an interesting path relative to a lot of guys who get these jobs. Spent a lot of time in the college ranks, whether that was an assistant at Colgate, places like Northwestern. He was the manager proper at Stevens Institute of Technology in New Jersey, for anybody who's repping that. And then he makes the jump up into the USL, mainly working with Ben Pierman. The connection there being that Pierman played under his brother, who's the longtime coach at Michigan State. And so those two have been tied at the hip in Memphis and Charleston ever since. You talk to people, you read Nicholas Murray's article about what the Rensing hire means. There's a real sense that he is a terrific communicator. He's somebody who's got bright, high-pressing, attacking principles, but he knows how to get players on the same page with that. It's a real sea change for Las Vegas when you think about what Antonio Nocerino brought to the table. I tend to think it's a very good hire for that program to get back on track.
I just love the idea of, an assistant within USL being targeted, because it means that there is a level of homework being done here. And some of it could just be, hey, battery's the hottest thing on the market right now. So it feels kind of easy on the one hand, but at the same time, I think the idea of going out and being like, you know what, Ben Pierman is doing the best job in USL right now. Let's go get his assistant and see if we can build something from there. Even if that was the extent of the thought process, it's better than what happened with the Nocerino hire, which was name to job, right? Like just straight up name recognition, famous guy. So I think I like this hire for Lights a lot. I like the fact that USL is sort of like you wrote about, John, like the coaching trees. I think that's important for the league, for guys to get these sort of jobs and expand the influence of these guys. And ultimately it'll be very, very interesting because I think his approach will be quite different, obviously, from what Lights have gotten. And it might be something closer to Dennis Sanchez in terms of approach, in terms of pedigree, in terms of player connections, all that sort of stuff. And so hopefully we see Lights have a bit of a reaction here. And I will say, as a Locomotive fan, I'm very glad that this hire happened now and not we've been the victim of the new manager bounce for a handful of teams this season. So I'm glad that Locomotive got their game in against Lights before Devin got the job.
We will circle back to the playing the last game against a lame duck bounce that you got to enjoy. But Ryan, any thoughts on this one and the hire?
Yeah, I think it's really important within USO that we have these hires within the league. Like we talked about a few weeks ago with Casiato being able to be allowed the chance to move from Omaha to Tampa Bay, but having this kind of intra-league market that we talk about, not just with players, but having that benefit with managers, I think is another feather in the cap for the league to say it's like this is a living and breathing ecosystem that it just kind of shows the health of the league as well. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how Rensing does with this Lights team. I mean, over the last 4 games, that really was kind of in the nail in the coffin to like, let's make a change now. The Lights were outscored 16-3. Ironically enough, the last team to beat the Lights 6-0 was the Charleston Battery in April of last year. So Rensing was on that staff.
Yeah.
As well. But, and then just kind of looking ahead for the quote unquote new manager bounce on August 16th, they are playing Dennis Sanchez's New Mexico United, which is an immediate kind of just measuring stick, if you will, on how's the Rensing project going on game number 2 of the era.
That will be a great measuring stick for Rensing and the Lights, but also their former manager and Dennis Sanchez, who is going to be looking for a rebound performance because New Mexico got their you-know-what kicked in by Hartford Athletic. Hartford ends up winning this game 4-0. It was 3-0 by the 26th minute, and frankly, it could have been more. Like, the way that Hartford was eating them alive in transition was unbelievable to see. Phil, talk me through what you liked about the Hartford side of things.
I think this is a level of maybe pragmatism that we used to see from Brendan Burke. And then I don't know, I'm not trying to like speak about it personally. Yeah. I just feel like there maybe was a bit of like ever since Colorado Springs made that conference final, there was a little bit of like, I don't want to say arrogance, but maybe believe in the hype a little bit and playing in a way that was like, okay, we're going to play, like we're going to dominate teams. We're going to have a lot of the ball. We're going to like move things side to side. We're going to like pick people apart. When I want to say that Brendan Burke's best teams have been like pretty counterattacking, pretty pragmatic, like quick, lightning fast, and just deadly in front of goal. And it was an edge. It was like a lethal edge that you have not seen from this Hartford side in 2 years, like 2+ years now, the finishing was ruthless. They found ways in behind New Mexico for fun, which not a lot of people have been able to do that often this year. So yeah, it was just an absolutely ruthless display. And it was nice to see because Hartford has been kind of this like wet noodle. And the fact that they had this sort of lethal edge was just very, very refreshing. And, I can't lie. It made me feel lots of personal joy. Especially at a time when I was feeling quite down about the fact that they had signed Valentin Noel. So yeah, I enjoyed the performance, but I think it was maybe a bit of a return to the things that made Brendan Burke teams in the first place.
And that's a really astute observation because when you think about the best version of his switchbacks teams, it was Haji Berry and Michigan Galena doing their thing in those transitional moments when the pitch is open and they've got space. Mamadou Dieng, he's 21, 22 years old. Maybe not as mature and complete a player as Berry, who kind of turned into like this soft number 10 at times. but man, can he finish. And he's great at picking out opportunities. He lit New Mexico up in this game. And Ingalina is a player that in his prime was a 20 goal contribution player, all USL. He has not been that in Hartford. It has been a long road to get back to the level of performance that we saw. And I thought the way that he was utilized in this matchup was extremely clever on Burke's part. The midfield on one side had Engalina ostensibly as part of this almost diamond-shaped defensive setup, but he was really allowed to just cheat up, make these runs up the left channel, specifically targeting Usman Jabong, who is a central midfielder who has been miscast in the back line because of injuries for New Mexico. So Brendan Burke knew I want to exploit that matchup. But he also knew I need a counterweight on the other side to make sure we're solid defensively. So it's Junior Morera, who's kind of more of a number 6 by nature, taking up that same position on the right side, but he'd drop in, he would deny those passing lanes into Valentin Noel. And by doing that, there was a level of panic from United that was creating those turnovers and allowing to the counters. It really was exactly how Brendan Burke drew it up. And the fact that he is scheming again, trying to come up with that scenario against whoever the opponent might be in a given week, that is really meaningful to see if you're a Hartford fan.
And in the last 4 Hartford home games across all competitions, they've had a 4-0 victory over New Mexico and a 3-0 victory over Loudoun as well. It may, quote unquote, be the lads protocol here, but like those are performances you want to see at home from a team who's suffered for a long time playing at home. Like this was their largest margin of victory since they beat a team who's now playing in MLS Next Pro back in June 2021. Like that's a result that like you wanted to see that record fall at some point. Like having 4 goals on in this match, like 40% of Hartford's goals this year have been on Wednesday nights randomly. They play again tomorrow night and can very well add to that tally. But yeah, I think the one match that I'm going to have at least circled in 2 weeks' time, also happening on the 16th, so alongside that New Mexico Las Vegas game, is Hartford gets to play host to Tulsa.
Yeah, that's fireworks. I do want to quickly shout out our old friends, the Baby Bulls, who just gave up 9 goals in a game to Chicago Fire 2 a week ago.
Holy
Things
Lord.
are continuing to go well there, clearly.
I did what? Sorry.
Oh, I was saying,
go ahead, Ryan.
I was saying that my betting app is now caught up that MLS Next Pro games just all go over 2.5 goals as just like an immediate, that's what happened. And they've caught on to those odds and have stopped offering like fair odds at over 2.5 goals. So
love it.
The one thing I wanted to say on Dieng specifically is this is like a bit of a two-faced season from him, and I think it speaks to his age. In his first, he's played 16 games for Hartford this year, and in his first 8 appearances, he had 1 goal, 1 assist. In the second group of 8, he's got 5 goals and an assist, like 6 goal contributions in 8 games since then. He's absolutely on fire. And yeah, basically once May turned into June, he's been practically unstoppable. So I think like talking about his age, it feels like one of those players that has grown up a lot over the course of the season and is clearly finding his feet in terms of just finishing ability.
He feels like a player that really has the potential to go places, whether that's Europe, MLS, or what have you. Like every tool you want out of a striker, Dieng is kind of bringing it to the table.
Yeah.
I do want to throw in a word here relative to New Mexico, who on the sly has a negative expected goal difference on the year, the 7th worst in the USL. You watch them in this game where it's Greg Hurst coming back to the lineup. It's Valentin Noel making his first league start for this team, and they just look disconnected. I am withholding judgment until they get more reps together and until we see Kalen Ryden back and healthy. But I think there is room to worry that New Mexico's back end has too many vulnerabilities when they come up against a team like Hartford with a good counterattack or a number of their foes in the West who are built similarly. Something to chew on, at least, if you're Dennis Sanchez.
and they play Tulsa this weekend, and if results go against them, we could be finding New Mexico 8th in the Western Conference.
Wow.
I was trying to pull up their shot map, because the thing that struck me is they take a lot of shots in this game, and at no point watching it did I feel like they took 22 shots, right? Like it was sort of what we talked about in Portland, where we were like, I know Pittsburgh shot a lot, and it didn't ever feel like they shot that much. Similar for New Mexico, where it was like the danger just didn't feel like it was there. And maybe it was just because Hartford was so dangerous in the chances that they created. But I think that's the other aspect, I guess, of this New Mexico side, is like they can feel a little disjointed at times. They obviously can get gotten at, with this current mix of personnel on the counterattack. And then I would also say, with the season that they're having, or that their attackers are having, they will need someone to kind of consistently be up there to be on the end of more dangerous chances to put them away. And now looking at them, they had actually some decent chances in this game, and probably should have done better in some instances. But that sort of speaks to the lack maybe of, Hurst hasn't been firing on all cylinders, and down that that front line is just, it's not been the fireworks, I guess, that you'd expect.
Yeah, 100%. They will need to round into form for that matchup, like we talked about Tulsa that's coming up soon. Tulsa, a team that just keeps on pulling it out late. This time around, it was a 3-2 win against Loudoun United, with 2 last-ditch goals getting the job done. We will circle back, because there is a lot to praise on Tulsa. But Ryan, are you pulling the trigger? Is Lads protocol happening?
I mean, they haven't won since June 14th, and this is at least starting to get into very worrying form. Shockingly, they're still 3rd in the Eastern Conference, just as a testament to how much they've built up at the start of the year. But yeah, you don't go basically the entire month of July without a victory, without starting to find the panic button and starting to press it, especially if you're looking forward to Loudoun's upcoming games. That they do have Charleston at the end of the month, and then it's Rhode Island in the 11, and the Jägermeister Cup match against Sacramento that could restore some confidence. But yeah, this is starting to get into, okay, this is the Loudoun team that we kind of all remember.
Yeah, I think it's wild that, I know the West is the simulation and that's the joke and everything. I think it's highly crazy that the East has, the team in 3rd place has a +1 goal difference, when the top 2 have a +20 and a +22. And the next best is +2, North Carolina and Pittsburgh. Anyways. So the East is also fake. I just wanted to let folks know that. But Loudoun in particular, despite having the 3rd most goals scored in the East, have the 3rd most goals allowed, I think, also. And so it's just, they are leaky. And this, I think, this game sort of encapsulates to me why Loudoun worries me, because in a game where they probably had a couple of chances to just see it out. One, there's a little bit something special about Tulsa right now, and I don't want to, I think I even put this in my tweet about the Lads protocol. Tulsa is Tulsa right now, and it is something, there is a little bit of fairy dust on them right now, which I think hurts Loudoun ultimately with the nature of the winner. And it still would have been 2-2, right? It still would have been a slightly disappointing draw, where they give up a lot of chances to Tulsa, and Tulsa probably deserved to win, I think, in the end, all things being equal. So yeah, for Loudoun, I just don't know if they have the juice. To be 3rd, they've won 8, lost 7. They only have 3 draws. There's just not, I don't know. It just feels like they're running out of steam a little bit. And I don't know. Maybe Loudoun really does maybe they really always do this shit. I don't know.
Yeah, so just to fill Andy and any listeners who are unfamiliar with the Lads Protocol in, that is an acronym coined by Phil that Loudon always does the shit. Because Loudon is a team that just collapses at the end of the year. Like, they will start nicely. They will be a team that we try to convince you are a dark horse, and then they will DS. They will, yeah.
At some point, if they do end up missing the playoffs, I will request that Kaylor make a Lads Protocol supercut from the show, because it will be genuinely funny to look back on. Like, I want to say I said it quite early in the season, so and yeah, I've just been invoking it since then. I just, there's something too about this Loudon team where it feels more disappointing than previous iterations. We talked about whatever, the People's Champ a couple of years ago, of a Loudon team that was freshly off of their DC United connection, and it was easy to root for, and there were low expectations, all that sort of stuff. Now a lot of these guys around the team are known quantities, seasoned professionals. Like, we're not talking about DC United Academy kids anymore. Like, we're talking about genuine pros who would be, any team in the league would want a handful of these guys, right? Like, Abukora is going somewhere in the summer. Even Velo has been like a beast at times. Like, there's guys on this team who would make a genuine difference elsewhere in the league. And the unfortunate thing is, like, for whatever reason, this team just doesn't seem to have it as a group. And it's particularly disappointing given the fact that I think you could have had genuine expectation around this side.
I think that is the thing that is so disappointing. This just felt like the year. They had that sense of magic about them. It was Abukora, but everybody else was performing as well. Like, Zach Ryan looked like he'd taken a step up. Wesley Leggett was becoming a more mature player. The midfield felt balanced. To me, the real downfall started when Jacob Erlandson got hurt in the back line. What he did from the left-sided center back spot, not only in terms of excellent one-on-one defending, but in the way he set the tone in possession, I think that was really valuable for this team. Since the start of May, they've given up 18 XG. The next closest is Miami at 12. And a team like your El Paso Locomotive, who I'm like, they're not a great defensive team, they're just fine. They've given up 5.8 XG. So Loudon has given up triple the expected goals since the end of May. That's crazy. Like, this team is nuts. And granted, some of that is that one match against Hartford where they just gave up 7. So sure, caveat, but still, that's indicative of something's going wrong. The transition defense for me is really broken at the moment. You can even see someone like Hugo Farou, who, again, we've praised for being this lodestone, this player who represents the improvement. You can tell he's making errors because he's not trusting that back line anymore. It's a tough situation for this club. On the flip side, FC Tulsa doing the shit. Like, they have this magic about them. Stefan Lukic and others coming into these games late, knowing their role, having this sense of purpose has been incredible to watch. I was lucky enough to get to talk to Luke Spencer last week for a piece I did for Backheeled about what's behind this improvement. And when I go into those sorts of interviews and ask a manager about their tactical style, I always expect them to have a real clear idea of, yes, these are my XYZ principles. This is how I want the game to be played. And Luke Spencer really played up the fact that he wants this team to be adaptable and versatile. And I think that was reflected in the Loudon win, right? They come out and they've changed shapes into a 4-4-2. They're kind of doing a man-marking thing in the midfield that we haven't really seen from them. They're switching it up because they know what they think can give them an edge against Loudon United. And it takes a second half tweak to get there, but they do the job because Spencer has 22, 23 players that are completely bought in, bringing the physicality, bringing the energy. Is it luck? Sure, to a certain extent, but there is something that you can't quantify and can't teach that Tulsa has right now.
I mean, Tulsa's in the midst of, at least per my ELO ratings, their best season in club history. And if you're looking back at across all competitions, the last 4 games that Tulsa have won, they did so in come from behind fashion.
I think the thing that impresses me about Tulsa is compared to some of the teams around them or the teams that they're now sort of in the conversation with up towards the top of the table, the way it's put together is feels a little bit at times haphazard, I guess. Because there's been all these different managers, iterations, false starts. Like there were all, like last season was a perfect example of their manager was gone before the season even began. And so this club has gone through a bunch of different sort of cycles. And I think last season we talked about the fact that Tulsa always felt like this sort of like unfulfilled. I think I may have even written about the fact that it was sort of unfulfilled potential and just the fact that they've had they had this cool rebrand, and although RIP Roughnecks, they had all of this sort of, again, like sort of hype and momentum behind the off the field stuff, but then never really matched it with what was going on the field. And I think what's so cool about this particular iteration of FC Tulsa is that it is put together with sort of disparate pieces that now feel really cohesive, where Taylor Collier is was in Nisa before he joined Tulsa. Delu is in like an NPSL product, like who came through Next Pro and all of that stuff. Like Medcar, former Loudon guy,
Lads DNA, yeah.
And so I think that's the thing that's cool to me, is that you have sort of all of these guys who Tulsa took a punt on at one point or another, now all sort of coming good at the same time, which is just really cool to see. And then you have like now genuine depth in this Tulsa team, and it's not just the top 11 guys who are gonna contribute. Trevor Amon coming off the bench. Lucas Stauffer is a depth piece. Like there's just a lot here, and I think the fact that it's now coming together, despite the fact that it is sort of this, not like this isn't a commentary on the players, but it is this sort of like Frankenstein monster, in that all of these players are part of different managers' roster constructions. And so the fact that Spencer's able to build this cohesive team out of that has been really impressive, and I think speaks to the adaptability that he was talking about with you.
Yeah, and you think about even some of the roster moves they've had in season, it's picking up guys who aren't superstars. Like even someone like a Trevor Amon, who I think is wonderful, but if you are a USL sporting director, he probably comes off as damaged goods at this point. And that's not a diss for him. It's a reality of what he was dealing with at a club like Sacramento that had the Lopez injury early last year, changed managers. He just fell out of the scheme and the blueprint for them. The fact that Tulsa can see that, know what he brings to the table, know that they've got 4 former Hailstorm players who can help him adjust. Why not take a flyer on a guy that had 23 goals and a golden boot 2 years ago? Like that is just terrific to see from this club.
And a confident Trevor Amon, like if they can get him back firing, he probably wins this game on the chance that he had one-on-one before the winner.
I couldn't believe he missed that. Like, throat coming out, everything about that should have been his moment. And the fact that Tulsa keeps the mentality thereafter is wild.
Yeah. And the winner, I mean, from Coley, my word, what a hit.
Magic. We are going to stick in the West as we transition to one more game that was a standout from this weekend. In what really was a weird weekend, El Paso dropping 6 goals on Las Vegas deserves notice for being equally weird. Lots of factors that are influencing that performance from the lights. But Phil, take us home. What happened here to give El Paso that result?
I gotta say, like, this was, when you say weird, it was like watching it was also weird, because I don't know that I've ever encountered a Locomotive game with quite this energy. The Locomotive were dominant. I think it's safe to say.
Yes.
And the context of what Lights were going through and the fact that the team that's selected, like all of it is just very odd. And so I think while it is really good for Locomotive's confidence to hang 6 goals on somebody, and there are individual players who will take, I think, a lot of like good feeling out of this game, and they can feel good about the fact that, you know, they were putting the ball in the back of the net. There were times where it felt more like a training session than a game. And I think Lights, in terms of the fight, in terms of like making, even closing guys down, I think the goals in the second half in particular from these like cutbacks were just super indicative of how easy Lights were to play against. Where Cabrera, I think a couple of times like gets to the byline and just cuts it back towards the penalty spot, and there's just no Lights defender in the area. It's just like any Locomotive midfielder, take your pick, can run onto it and hit it. So while I think, you know, like I said, I think it's good that Locomotive took their chance to play like a beat down opponent and maybe get some like wind beneath their wings again after what's been a pretty tough stretch. I do worry that they might like I worry about over indexing on this result, because at the end of the day, it is against a very beat down Lights team that was already looking ahead to like, hey, who's the new boss going to be?
Yeah, I think that's a fair read on it. I will say I was heartened by some of the goal scoring sequences and the way that it felt like the midfield was getting involved, which for me has been something problematic about this team. Like there have been times where, whether it's Doroma or Calvillo, they aren't doing enough to interact with the forward line and add variety beyond, we're going to get Moreno the ball, we're going to get Cabrera the ball, and we're going to hope for the best. Doing it against like the training pitch vibe, feeling like you're going against cones, I don't know how much it matters. And this was a game where no Lights players won more than 5 duels, which is not good. But yeah, it has to be a confidence bump, if nothing else. I am, on the Las Vegas side of things, a little bit befuddled. Everything I've heard was that they knew Rensing was coming. The fact that you didn't see this as an audition and bring that full effort to stake your claim on a spot in this team maybe hints at deeper seated problems within the squad. Time will tell what gives and who will be in and out of that organization going forward. But yeah, this has to be rock bottom for the Lights.
Well, and I guess the question becomes like, because they've had these player transactions going on, and I think the interesting thing is, and maybe this is part of it too, is was Rensing involved? Like, was he involved early enough to where those are things that he signed off on? Because I'd assume not. Like, some of them happened quite long before he was announced. So I'd imagine he didn't necessarily have a hand in some of the like transactions. And was that maybe why there's this broad feeling of maybe every Lights player feels like it doesn't really matter because like they're gonna rebuild, and I'm like, my guy is not here anymore, so I'm probably gone anyways. And maybe there's a little bit of like feeling of instability beyond just like, oh, new boss, like let me show him what I can do. It's like maybe it's like they're all feeling like, well, new boss and a handful of guys are already out the door, so like who's next?
And it is interesting in this game, as I'm just trying to count mentally, less than half of their starting lineup were players that were part of the Sanchez team. So there's been a lot of turnover already on the sly. And obviously a lot of that is recent, right? With Howell and Valentin Noel going out the door. It's going to be interesting to see what gives. I will say, from what I've gathered, just hearing from the front office folks there, I think there is going to be some more movement, but time will tell.
it's funny because there are a handful of players on this Vegas side that I would absolutely like take if they're available, right? Like if I'm a USL Championship GM, I've got my eye on a couple of these, like that if you can get them at a cut rate, like absolutely, I'm taking a chance. But it is odd. I think it's almost like the reverse of what we talked about with Tulsa, right? Because it's like Vegas now has gone through a couple of these iterations where Sanchez brought in his guys, and now then Nocerino like oversaw this sort of like larger influx, and that blew up 8 games in, and now you've got all of these guys who are well regarded in USL, but now are sort of adrift, and yeah, just clearly confidence wise, like they are. And just pure desire to like fight in this game, it just wasn't there, particularly in the second half.
Andrew Forrest, get out of the broadcast booth and make some signings.
Yeah, no comment on
Ryan, anything from you on this one?
Yeah, just like looking back from last year, I know the Dennis Sanchez departure was obviously a major thing, but like this was a Las Vegas Lights team that was one match away from playing for the USL final up against Rhode Island, like shockingly as it was. And this was a Las Vegas Lights team that we were all calling to upset New Mexico when they played each other in the conference semifinals. And that was something that we got correct. So like it really shows like how quickly fortunes can really turn in USL for better or for worse going on both sides. But yeah, I mean, from El Paso's perspective, Phil, I think you hit it spot on that it felt kind of like a training performance. I was trying to scroll back through and it reminded me of when New Mexico had played Phoenix Rising a few years ago in 2022. I think it was Phoenix who had a lot of players who were just kind of missing that game. They've lost that game 7-0, and that was just one that you kind of had.
Game. The COVID
game.
Right.
That they just kind of had to
grown adults.
Yeah.
That just kind of had to write off. But like if you're El Paso's perspective, this is the record win that they've ever had as a club in USL against a USL opponent, and the most goals that they've scored in the match since they beat Hartford FC in the Open Cup. So like you do have to take some positives from the performance where you can get them. And El Paso is still in the midst of a playoff battle. They've won back-to-back games for the first time since May. So definitely take the positive.
Yeah, good stuff from them. Will be interesting to see how the momentum carries forward, if at all, on both sides of the equation. That about wraps it up for the formal discussion we had. I do want to open the floor to any other USL thoughts we got. And I will start off with some transfer news that came across the transom today, with Matthew Corcoran coming on loan to Rhode Island FC, somebody who knows Connor Smith from the time they spent together in Birmingham, a very talented table setter and passer from the defensive midfield spots. It's an interesting move because he doesn't necessarily bring that flashy skill set that I think Rhode Island fans might have been screaming out for, but he does all of the little things that it can improve you. There was a reason he was getting legitimate minutes in MLS not too long ago. I think Corcoran can be additive and stabilizing for this team, even if he maybe isn't the final piece they need.
Yeah, it's an interesting move, like given the fact that he's still just 19, and like you said, was playing actual real minutes in MLS. So it's clear that he's got something very special. We know that he's a great player from, like you said, his time in Birmingham. I think the interesting thing for Rhode Island to me is that that's not the thing that necessarily like jumps off the page at me for Rhode Island. I was like, you need goal scorers. Like
they've got 6 center mids who can do that job really well.
Yeah, so
he's a good player, but
yeah, absolutely. And that's what, I think it is a little bit odd, unless you just straight up don't trust like the people in midfield. But I do think when you go out and get someone like Maxi Rodriguez over the offseason, you expect like, okay, central midfield's probably taken care of. It's other areas that we need to bolster. And so yeah, it's a little bit strange, but I think, it is one of those signings where it's probably mutually beneficial in that you get a player who's got serious chops and serious future prospects in MLS, and and is gonna obviously give it his all on loan in Rhode Island for a manager that he has a seemingly good relationship with. So yeah, I think it's, makes sense.
Ryan, Phil, any other open floor thoughts?
Boise got over 5,000 season ticket deposits already, and like the game to watch this weekend is obviously going to be Louisville Charleston, which winner of that one likely puts himself in the driver's seat for the Players Shield. So definitely one to watch at 8.
Yeah, I mean that's got to be the headline, and then I think no other USL thoughts tonight.
Beautiful. Then we will get into the fun part here. Ryan, what you been watching? What you been enjoying? The floor is yours.
Yeah, I guess I watched another Danny Boyle film, Sunshine, last night. I think you and I gave it the same score on Letterboxd of 2.5 stars. That I kept thinking the Doctor and the TARDIS was going to show up at some point, just because it had that vibe of this is a rejected Doctor Who plot at some point. But beyond that, I'm actually attending a card convention on Saturday, so hoping to go buy some really cool Pokemon or sports cards. So that's been kind of on my schedule for the weekend.
Love that. We will await an update next Tuesday night, so be here for that. Phil, what you been up to?
I've continued to watch Hacks. Me and my wife are now on season 4 of Hacks, which I'm just like, I cannot recommend enough. It's so good. For any person in media who talks about like, oh, you just can't write jokes these days because everybody's so sensitive or whatever, I was like, Hacks just like navigates that dynamic so wonderfully. It's amazing. Just like masterful the way that they go about the sort of generational divide in comedy and all that sort of stuff. It's just very, very, very good. And then very random, but me and being here in Toledo, Ohio, me and my wife and my daughter went to Jeep Fest this past weekend because there's a big Jeep factory in Toledo, and so Jeep puts on this like massive like festival downtown. There's a parade of I think like 1,400 customized Jeeps that people like sign up to be in the parade. It was wild, and it is really crazy like seeing, because to me Jeep Fest, like Jeep screams, like especially having been in the military previously, Jeep screams like a white guy of a certain flavor, right? Like that's who owns Jeeps. And the cool thing about Toledo is that all kinds of people own Jeeps and they all enter them in. So you could have like somebody rolling down the street blasting 3-6 Mafia, and then like the guy next to him had like Hulk Hogan merch, and I was like, man, this would be like a fist fight any other place. And Jeep is bringing people together, so I guess like whatever it was. But no, it was a lot of fun. They throw rubber ducks out. That's like the Jeep thing. I find Jeep culture to be quite weird. I don't actually like subscribe to it. And there were a lot of food trucks. It was a good time. Corinne got to go in a bouncy house, so it was all good.
What more do you want? Greatest country in the world.
Yep.
Boy, on my end, okay, I don't know if either of you saw the recent-ish horror movie Barbarian.
No, but I heard about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very spoilable movie, but the guy who directed it has a new thing out this weekend with like Josh Brolin and Julia Garner. So I will be going with some friends to see that. Over the past weekend, there is a museum in Queens called the Museum of the Moving Image, which is basically just like a movie museum. So they've got a permanent exhibit on like the history of film cameras. They've got a ton of old Muppets stuff that Jim Henson's family donated, which does rock to see. Like, oh, sick, there's Statler and Waldorf looking at me, probably making comments. And so the special thing they've got right now is like a Tom Cruise sponsored Mission Impossible How Do All of the Stunts Work exhibit, which rocked. So saw that, and then saw a screening of Top Gun Maverick with their Unreal sound system, which like blew me away very literally.
That's legit.
That's awesome.
Good times. All right. I think that's all we've got for you. Go watch that Charleston game. Go do whatever you're doing in the USL. We will talk to you next week. But for now, here is Alan's.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see everyone again next time.